In this video, we'll be covering Chapter 9, Section 1. We're going to be measuring length in the English system and in the metric system. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the English system first. Okay, length is a linear measurement. Okay, so length can be measured in different types of units. We have 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. 36 inches is equal to 1 yard. And then 50 to 80 feet is equal to 1 mile. All of these measurements are going to be provided on your formula sheet that you can print out and use on your exams. Okay, so there's a reference sheet under this unit. Print it out. I suggest putting it in the little sleeve again, and I'll show you why later. Dimensional analysis is used to convert from one measure of unit to another. This comes very handy, especially when you're doing physics. Okay? A unit fraction is the numerator and the denominator with different units, but the value is equal to 1. So basically here, this value is the same thing as saying 1, okay? Because we have the units attached. Just like we would say 2 over 2 is equal to 1, okay? We can say that 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. So 12 inches over 1 foot is the same thing as equaling to 1, okay? We have to take in consideration those particular units, okay? So let's go ahead and convert 5 feet to inches. The first thing I always do is start with the 5 feet. I make it into a fraction. So I always start with the given value and I put it over 1 if it doesn't have it already, okay? Then what we do for our unit fraction is whatever we have in the numerator that we're trying to get rid of, we're going to go and find it here, okay? In this case, you can see we have feet here and we also have feet here. Since we're looking for inches, we're going to go ahead and use this one and not this one, okay? These are exactly the same thing. So I put 1 foot at the bottom, 12 inches at the top, and notice now I can cancel my feet out. Okay, so feet over feet, they cancel, and I'm left with 5 times 12, which is equal to 60. And notice the only unit I have left now are inches. Okay. Okay, in this one, we have 78 inches into feet. So start with your 78 inches and put it over 1. We're using the same conversion, but since we have inches in the numerator, we want to go ahead and use this one where the inches is going to be in the denominator. So here I put 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, and as you can see, I canceled out my inches. So when I'm doing my conversion, all I'm doing is multiplying the numerator, so 78 times 1 is 78, and then divide it by 12. Let's go ahead and do this one in the calculator. Okay, so 78 divided by 12 gets me 6.5. And notice the only units I have left are now feet. Part B says 17,160 feet, and we're going to convert that to miles. Okay, you don't have to remember those conversions, you have them with you. So I'm starting with the 17,160 feet over 1, and then I want to convert from feet to miles, so I'm going to look at my conversion here. Inches to feet, feet to yards, inches to yards, feet to miles. This is the conversion I want, so what I'm going to do is start with my division bar. Whatever I have in the top, I'm going to put that in the denominator. So this 5280 feet goes in the denominator. The 1 mile goes in the numerator. Our feet will cancel, and then we can use our calculator to determine that answer. So 17,160 divided by 5280 is equal to 3.25, which I have here, and the only unit I now have is miles. Okay, the last one we have here is from 3 inches to yards. So I'm going to start with my 3 inches over 1, and now I'm going to look for my conversion. Inches to feet, feet to yards, inches to yards. This is the one we want to use. Since I have inches in the numerator, I'm going to have inches on the second one in the denominator. So I have 36 inches is equal to 1 yard. My inches will cancel, and I'm going to be left with 3 over 36. I can plug that into the calculator. Now here, notice that we have a repeating decimal. So this 3 will continue to go on forever and ever and ever. We cannot write this as our final answer because it has that repeating decimal. On the other one, it had it exactly as 3.25 and it cut it off. What we have to do in this case is go ahead and change this to the exact value, which is a proper fraction. So I'm going to do second PRB, and that will tell me it's the same thing as 1 over 12, which is what I wrote here. Since we don't have any other units, we're going to go ahead and transfer over yards. So on this next part, we're going to be talking about the metric system. This is really important because the rest of the world uses the metric system as their standard measurement. Okay, I have that information right here on the other half of your formula sheet. Okay, all of these units here are like King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk, if you want to remember it. The K stands for kilo, and then the unit could be anything. Okay, Henry stands for hecto, and then the units is whatever you want it to be. So if we change this to watts, it could be kilowatts, hectowatts. Doesn't, deca, decawatts instead of meters. Okay, usually stands for the units, and this is whatever that last part is going to be. Okay. So if you notice here, I do not have anything written. So whatever you want our units to be, that would change the root word. So if we put liters here, it would be kiloliters. If we put watts, it would be kilowatts. And that would apply to all of these. This is essentially an example, so I can go ahead and say, if I want meters, I would put meters here, and then I would put meters here, 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 and here. Okay, so whatever you decide goes in the middle. Let's go ahead and try it. On part A, it says convert 8,000 meters to kilometers. All right, so our measurement here is going to be meters. So I'm going to go ahead and put meters everywhere. By the way, the reason we have a DA here is because we also have a D here. So when you see deca, you're going to be using a DA. When you see deci, you're going to be using just the D. We need to identify. If we didn't have that A there, these two would look identical. Okay. All right, so first thing what we're going to do is we're going to identify what we're starting with. Since right here, since we're starting with the M, what we're going to do is go ahead and circle the M, and then we are going to go to kilometers, and I'm going to identify that with just the line underneath. Okay, so basically we're going to start with the circle, and we're saying we're going from meters to kilometers, and I'm going to count each one individually. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put my arrow. Okay, notice what I did. When I was converting, I started on the unit that we were given, and I counted how many times I had to go over. This is 1, 2, 3. So I am going 3 units, and look at the arrow. It's going from this point out to the left. So I'm going 3 units left. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and put this 8,000. Okay. You don't see a decimal place here, but it is located at the end of the 0. Okay. Otherwise, you would see it somewhere along here. So what I'm going to do is put my decimal. I'm going to go ahead and put my decimal place here. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and write down the number. I have 3 zeros and an 8, so I'm going to put 1 digit for each one of these words. Okay, so there's my 8,000. Now I'm going to take my decimal place and I'm going to move it in the same direction. It's going to be moved in between. Okay, so here we have 8, there's my decimal place, and zeros followed by, so I can just use 8 kilometers. Let's go ahead and try this again with part B. Now what we have is 53 meters to millimeters. So here's my decimal, decimals after the 3. So I'm going to put a 3 here and I'm going to put a 5 there. Okay, so there are my numbers. Everywhere else you see, you can go ahead and put zeros. And you can even put zeros up here too. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're starting with the meters, which is circled here. It's still circled. And we're going to millimeters, which is way over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Here's our decimal place. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we moved our decimal 3 spaces. Let's go ahead and look here. So here's a 53. This is now going to be a comma with 3 zeros at the end. And then we'll use the millimeters here. Okay, let's go ahead and try this with part C. We have 604 centimeters to hectometers. In this case, we have 604 and a decimal goes right after the 4. We're going to from centimeters to hectometers. So let's go ahead and draw that. We're still using meters, so I didn't change that. But now our decimal place is going to be after the centimeters. Okay, so I'm putting my decimal here, and I'm going to write the number 604. Okay, 604, and there's my decimal. Always use 1 digit for each of these individual spaces. Okay. So we're starting with centimeters and we're going to hectometers. So I'm going to go ahead and circle centimeters, and I'm going to find my hectometers, which is way over here. Let me erase this one. Remember, with these other spaces, go ahead and fill it in with just zeros. Okay, so you're going to have one number for every one of these. So I'm starting with the centimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and start here, and I'm going to each one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We are moving our decimal place 4 units to the left. I put move decimal to 4 spaces to the left. Now we move the decimal to right there. Okay. Because we have 2 zeros here, we only need to indicate 1. So I have 1 0, the decimal place 0, 6, 0, 4. Okay. And then we can go ahead and change it to hectometers. Last one is, let's go ahead and write it down. Here's our decameters right here. So I'm going to put my decimal place in between, and let's go ahead and put in our numbers. Here's our 6. Our decimal stays exactly where it is, and then the 7, 2. So 7, 2. I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest with zeros in both directions. Okay. Now I'm going from decameters, which is this one, and I'm going all the way to centimeters, which is over here. Okay. So what we're going to do is take our decimal and move it over. 1, 2, 3. It's going to go right here. So our new number now is going to be 6, 7, 2, 0, and then our decimal place is at the end. I don't need to write the decimal here because it's understood it's at the end, and then I have centimeters. Now let's go ahead and convert English units to metric or from metric to English. These formulas are on the other side of your page at the bottom. Okay, so inches to centimeters, feet to centimeters, yards to meters, and miles to kilometers. Notice here you have some with a direct equal sign and some with an approximation. So these are your exact values here, and these are your approximation here. Let's go ahead and do the first conversion. It says convert 8 feet to centimeters. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting what I'm given, put it over 1, and then we're going to look for a measurement between feet and centimeters. I have the exact values listed here, and notice I have feet to centimeters. So I'm going to put my feet at the bottom since it's at the top here, and I'm going to put the 30.48 centimeters in the numerator. These can cancel. Now all I have to do is multiply. 8 times 30.48 is equal to 243.84. Feet cancel out, leaving me with just centimeters. Part B says convert 20 meters to yards. So when I go up here, I'm looking at meters to yards. It's an approximate value, so this is the conversion that I'll be using. I start with my 20 meters and put it over 1. Since meters is in the numerator, I want the meters or the 0.9 meters to be in the denominator, and that will equal approximately 1 yard. My meters will cancel, so now I'm going to go ahead and put this into my calculator. 20 divided by 0.9 is going to equal 22.22222. Now, notice in this particular case, I used 22.22. I didn't change this back to a fraction, and the reason being is because this number is already just an approximation. So we can't say that it equals an exact value. So in this case, it's okay to use the squiggly line and put the approximation up to 2 decimal places. For part C, it says 30 meters to inches. So let's go ahead and look at our conversions. Inches to centimeters, feet to centimeters, yards to meters, and miles to kilometers. In this particular case, since we don't have one that has our direct measurements, we're going to have to use multiple conversions to get from meters to inches. There's a couple of ways that we can do this. I'm going to go ahead and show you both ways. Since we started with our meters, let's go ahead and start with our dimensional analysis. We have to convert from meters to centimeters first, because that's what we need in order to use this exact conversion here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and use this side. Since we're given meters, which belongs here, I'm going to go ahead and fill out my chart. So here's my meters, and then we're going to centimeters. So we're going from this one to this one. Okay. So remember, if we want to find out our unit value, we can say that our decimal place is here because we have 1 meter, and we want to be able to go in this direction. So I'm going to go 1, 2. So I can say 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. So that's the conversion that I have here. 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. My meters will cancel, and then I'm left with just centimeters up here. Once I have the centimeters up here, I can go ahead and go back to my conversion and use the centimeters that's located here. So the 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. Okay. Now that I have the multiple steps, I can just go ahead and use my calculator to multiply these together. I'm going to do 30 times 100 times 1, which I don't need, so I get 3,000 in the numerator, divided by 2.54, and I get 1181.1 inches. Okay. In this particular case, we cannot change this one to an improper fraction. So if I go and try and change it to a fraction, I get the exact same number. So we just go ahead and leave it to 1 decimal place. Okay, all of our units cancel out except for inches, so inches is the only one shown. Another way we could have done this is we could have convert our meters to yards first. I'm going to go ahead and do that. That's not on your notes, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that now. I'm going to start with my 30 meters first, divide that by 1, and now I'm going to use my approximation. I'm going to start with my 0.9, which goes on the denominator, because my meters on this one is in the numerator, and it's going to equal 1 yard. Okay. My meters will cancel, and now I can convert from yards to inches. If I look at my other units, I can see that 1 yard is equal to 36 inches. I'm going to go ahead and write that here. 1 yard, since my yard here is in the numerator, I'm going to use a yard here in the denominator, is equal to 36 inches. These will cancel, and now I'm left with just my inches. Let's go ahead and plug this into the calculator. Okay. I have 30 times 36. That gets me 1080 divided by 0.9. When I divide it by 0.9, you can see that we have an approximation of 1200. That is the approximation that we have here if we were going to round to the hundredths place. So I can say it's approximately 1200 inches. So depending on what your problem states, if it wants the exact value, you can do it. If it wants an approximation, you can do that as well. Last problem says a road in Europe has a speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour. Approximately how many miles per hour is this? So in this particular case, notice that our units are in a fraction form. So I split it up as 60 kilometers goes in the numerator, the hour goes in the denominator, right? First thing we're going to go ahead and do here is go ahead and change our kilometers. We want the miles to be in the numerator, but we want to keep the hours in the denominator. So I'm not changing the denominator for units, I'm just going to change the numerator from kilometers to miles. I'm going to go ahead and use my conversion, and here you can see at the bottom you have 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. This will be an approximate value, so we're going to use that one. Kilometers is in the numerator here, so I'm going to put the 1.6 kilometers in the denominator, and I put is equal to 1 mile in the numerator. Now I can see that the kilometers will cancel out, leaving me with the miles per hour. So let's go ahead and do that in the calculator. We have 60 divided by 1.6, and we get 37.5 miles per hour. All right, that concludes this section. Let me know if you have any questions.